Hello! So, this is Star Wars Episode 5 The Empire Strikes Back. 9M2 Vader shows up. Music by John Williams, orchestrated by Al Woodbury. I think this might even be one of the last ones he did. I've got Frank's catalogue here. So we'll find out. Because he's very, very kindly put all of this in. Oh no, there are a few more. So we've got Putting 3PO Together and then Trouble in Prison. So two left from him, which is... I always like it because his handwriting is so much better than better than Herb Spencer's. So we've got an interesting one here because some of the music we've actually just heard in the last cue, which is this sort of harp interlude, which replaced the original piece, which just had this sort of long pedal of this chord here, which I've kind of almost left actually because it's discordant. So I'm not sure there's any useful way of sort of analysing it apart from pitch class set at that point. But we'll come back to that. So we have heard some of the music before, which I've also just for the ease I've just sort of repeated really. So let's start at the beginning. One of the interesting things about all of this is that you find connections where you didn't expect them to be there. And one of the connections is this interesting dark beginning, which is just this, like that. I'm just going to turn that up a little bit. So interestingly enough, it has this sort of E minor with a major seventh outline. Like that, which is actually one of the most common chords in Star Wars. It just doesn't sound like it. And interestingly, it's got exactly the same pitch profile as the Chromatic Knell, which is, it's not a person. This Chromatic Knell, which is basically we find it much earlier. I think around the sort of Hoth bit. Maybe Captain Nida has been promoted to. Oh no, it's not Nida. It's Piet has been promoted to Admiral, and the previous one's dead. Which is also similar to the pseudo-Uranus motive as well, except that's actually different pitch set, in fact. But it's interesting that sort of Chromatic Knell, I'm going to make a call that it's a derivation of it, if I can spell the word derivation. There we go, the Chromatic Knell, since it's the same PC set. And it has a similar sort of angularity to it, sort of up, down sort of thing. So a similar sort of angularity and darkness really as well. So, you know, it's an interesting presentation either way. Even if it wasn't that, it's an interesting presentation of 419, this sort of minor chord with a major seventh. And then we're back into the Cloud City theme at this point, over an E pedal. So all of those chords. And it's very slightly different. This wonderful sort of cluster with everything in it. And we've got lots of major sevenths. The sixth chord is fine because that's just you know, a replacement chord for the seventh, basically. You can do that. So it's the block chordal harmonization that is found so much in Star Wars. We've seen it time and time again. In this case, it's horns and the violins who are all doing that. And then we've got little pizzicato strings, sort of happy, joyous, overly joyous pizzicato, possibly. I think there's always intent behind everything that Williams writes. And then we've got really nice phrase modulation. In other words, there's no pivot note necessarily. It just starts into a new phrase. That's called phrase modulation, and I called it tertiary because of the E to C. So it's going down. And it's still sort of that Walton-esque thing. You can find it in things like Henry V, Richard III, that sort of thing. Lots of those sorts of block chordal harmonisations, lots of major sevenths. This one is slightly different, of course. Like that. Yeah. There's little hints of that, aren't there, almost? Yeah, very little hint of Hahn and Leia at that point. Just in the harmony, really, more than anything else. A couple of other points, sort of interesting that, you know, in this chord here, we've got the full sort of, you know, cluster in closed position, but none of those notes in the flutes and clarinets are playing the the E at all. It's a sort of interesting voicing thing going on at that point. And also, he doesn't tend to want to just sort of have a crescendo on a long note. There's got to be something else there. Otherwise, it just sounds a bit... It doesn't really have any drive to go to the next phrase. So we've got something on each beat. So as soon as that happens, we've got this. And then that dotted rhythm gives us the impetus for the next phrase. It's a sort of good case of composition teaching, really, in that. Try not to have sort of long notes which crescendo, because we need something else to keep the impetus up, often. So then we have a little bit of the Rebel fanfare, which is slightly changed. And then it changes when we've got the second part. Like that. It's interesting that he repeats it almost exactly 3 times. That's a sort of usually a bit of a no-no for Williams, so it's interesting that he sort of goes with it. Very, very slightly changed with the bass pizzicato at that point. And then he sort of put the Glock just on the G to highlight those things in the Celeste as well. So it's a real sort of bitonal moment. And for some strange reason, I seem to have neglected the chords here. So that's just B flat major 7. There we go. But also above C, really, as well. There's still that sort of pedal area, as you can see in the double bass. And that's what that is. That's not a timpani, but that is. There we go. So what else is going on? That's basically it. We just got some little F sus4s. So nice sort of that sort of almost implied sort of quartal quintal type sort of stuff going on. And then we end up just on that chord. So that's an E sus at that point. Actually, it's a sort of E7 sus4, but quartal in terms of the voicing of it. There we go. Got to do that. Or is it? It's more... Yeah, so actually I'm not sure that is E7 sus4 actually. Yeah, it's just an A sus4 actually. A sus4 with E in the bass. There we go. So it's not really chordal, really. I mean, it's sort of... It kind of is, actually. Yeah, I'm going to leave that in. And then change that to red. There we go. Problem solved. That was a sort of long-winded way of doing that. And then that becomes the leading note for this, where we suddenly hear Vader at that point. So let's just recap over all of that first of all. I'll play the cue. It's very, very biased to the right-hand side, this recording. That's amazing, that little bit, isn't it? So yes, so we've had all of that, and then suddenly it's Imperial. That's more of the Imperial stuff. I couldn't make out that. I think it was cut from the final recording. And then we got this extraordinary bit of sort of almost scare tactics, really. Similar to the "This is not a cave" bit, where they sort of have to fight the Minox. So this is a G minor and major chord, so it's an alpha chord. And then it becomes a Hungarian minor subset at the top as well. So in other words, all of those notes, but not all of them, if you see what I mean. Like that. Yeah, there we go. And then a chromatic flutter-tongued trumpet, which is quite rare. I think that's the first time I've seen that in Empire Strikes Back, at least. And I don't think there was anything in Phantom either. But there's possibly in A New Hope. I haven't done that yet, so I won't know. The trouble with this is that one gets so focused on one film. I just don't listen to anything else at the moment. It's just I don't have time. So then we got sort of all of these sort of scale-like passages, becomes sort of D harmonic minor, then changes to sort of G harmonic minor, but then becomes sort of B flat major, like that. It's really weird. And then we've got another of this little sort of ominous things. But amazingly, it's an A7 chord. It's just, but sort of horizontalized. And it's amazing how different it can sound like that in the context of everything else that's around it. So he could have gone with that sort of, you know, like that, which is the sort of ominous lurking thing. They're quite similar, aren't they? But not quite. And then we're into dyad territory, so more dyads. With the at this point, I think that's actually bassoons, so I'm going to go bassoons and contra. Whoops. There we go, bassoons and contra. Yeah, so we're sort of B flat minor, I guess. And then we've got another sort of common chord with C. So it's not... It doesn't have that function of Italian 6 at all. So I've just called it 3/8, just simply because it is quite a common chord in Star Wars. It's just a way of sounding sort of rather dissonant. And then we got this sort of tritone sort of idea as well above it, which again is quite a common feature. I'm not sure I've mentioned it too much in my commentaries, but it does seem to be something that crops up again and again. Then we got an A flat minor chord, but with the C flat and the bass, which then becomes, interestingly, E major. But then with the added note at that point. So really, I guess that's E with a sharp 4. So let's see whether it does that. E add sharp 4. It might not do. No. Okay. Fair enough. But basically that's what it is. And then we get, it becomes a sort of major minor idea with the addition of the G as well. So that's what it actually is. So they're quite gnarly, and they're all, interestingly enough, subsets of both Hungarian minor and octatonic subsets as well. So if you do a T1 is the transposed by one semitone. So we can find all of those notes in it. B flat, G, E, and then C flat, A flat as well. It just doesn't sound necessarily like that at the time, but it's clever how often, you know, something gnarly in Williams is almost always derived from Hungarian minor, octatonic, or hexatonic 620. Almost all of them. Very occasionally they're derived from things like the altered scale, which is half a sort of one of them, and then sort of an 0134 followed by lots of whole tones. Is that that's what jazzers call the super Locrian mode, by the way. So then we've got this sort of octatonic T2, misses out the A natural. And then sudden change. So we're back to what we did last time, so I'll be extremely brief, but basically Luke's theme. Don't forget the little rebel fanfare underneath it. Just a little hint of it. It's not quite the same, but we've got a sort of interesting example of this wrong note bass. So we got D above E flat, and then it becomes an alpha chord like that, and then sort of basically goes through from F to C, all above that E flat pedal, and then it goes down to an E above C Ionian. So in other words, like that. But the C itself doesn't seem to have any other fifth in it, so it's literally a C pedal. But you could also argue that it's actually an E major chord, but with a flat 6 as well. So many different sort of little interpretations. And then C in the bass. Like that. So all sorts of different things that you could have for that. You could even call it Ionian sharp 5. Like that. So whichever one you want to do. But then I like this. That's sort of all over a C pedal. So you could also argue that it's sort of almost bitonal as well. Little hint of that sort of rebel theme as well. And then there's 28 seconds to the next start of it. So that really is kind of it, really. It's quite short cue. It's only 1 minute and something. So no need to spend enormous amounts of time on it. I mean, the main interest is this sort of little sort of gnarly bits here. The Cloud City theme, which is always fun. And then the sort of Imperial Vader for only 2 bars. And then this sort of filigree in the flutes and piccolo. And flutter-tonguing trumpets. And sort of glissandi with tremolando as well. So lots of things going on. And then highest possible clusters. There's no easy way to write those in Sibelius, so I just left it. And that's pretty much it. A little bit of dyadic work. That sort of ominous A7 chord, which is really unusual. And then this sort of all this sort of Hungarian minor octatonic type stuff as well. Which is the sort of very sad bit, and then sort of Luke's coming to the rescue. Or is he? No, he's just about to get his hand chopped off and find out that Darth Vader's his dad. So it all gets very dramatic, if it wasn't already so. So that's that, and look forward to the next one, which I think is... was it 9M3, or I think it might have changed the numbering it by that point. It could be 10M something. Let's have a quick double check. So where are we? Putting 3BO together. So yeah, 9M3, then 9M4, 9M6 stroke 10M1. There's no 9M5 for some reason. Maybe there was, but it was never done. So we've got that, and then loops, use the captures, Chewie chokes Lando through the window, losing a hand, hyperspace finale, end credits. So all that sort of to come. So there's still quite a bit of music to come. And as we can see, this one's quite short, 42 millimeters, 16 millimeters, 16 millimeters. I'm not sure whether mm is millimeters, but I'm just guessing that it is. I don't know. So that's all for now, folks, and I'll see you very soon.